Hello there, welcome to episode 7 of Idiot Wind, our way of blustering our way through the definitive vinyl collection of Bob Dylan, as released by a bunch of madmen, I must say. And this time we're going to be discussing one of his most famous and acclaimed albums, without any doubt at all. The first double album in rock history, Blonde on Blonde. And we'll get to that in a little while. I'm going to be joined by this. My name's Sean Hewitt, by the way, and I'm in Nottingham. And I do hold a grudge, and I may well call on you. My associate here is in Whitley Bay. His name is Sid Smith. He's badly built, and he walks on stilts. But watch out, he don't fall on you. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of the subject of our broadcast, Mr. Bob Dylan, in lyrics you can find on this very LP. Anyway. Yeah, Sid's very excited about this one. This is one of his favourites. And we've got the magazine again, which we always review disparagingly. This awful sheet of paper, which folds out into what is not a magazine, but a poster. But I'd like to say a few words about this. Look at this. I didn't know some of the things in this list. This is a detailed personnel list for every track on the album. And the credits on the record itself, the sleeve, are cursory. They very much impressed the Nashville musicians. This album was recorded overwhelmingly in Nashville. The sessions began in New York, but they continued in Nashville. And the album was made in short order, as Bob's albums always are. He used, at the behest of producer Bob Johnston, a basic rhythm section of Nashville country musicians who were overwhelmed when their names appeared on the cover of the album, something they weren't used to, and something, because of the high profile of this album, that got them loads of work. But I didn't realise all the people who are on this record, some of which are not even mentioned on the cover. For example, on a very famous song indeed, One of Us Must Know Sooner or Later, I didn't realise Rick Danko from the band played bass on that. I know that Robbie Robertson, who's a very close collaborator of Dylan at this stage, is all over the album on guitar. What I didn't realise was this is more like looking at the credits for this. Unlike most Bob albums, this stuff sometimes reads like a Brian Ferry album. There's about 4 or 5 guitar players on some of these tracks, including the one on which it says on the cover, Bob plays lead guitar. Well, I wonder if it isn't playing lead guitar on that one, but it probably is, because it's probably an incompetent solo masked by the masked guitars of everybody else. But that's just my cynicism coming in there. This album is the third and final part of Bob's Electric Trilogy, recorded in 15 months and released in 15 months in 65 and 66. It is another move forward, and it's the culmination of this sound, this, what he calls his Mercury sound. He finally gets what is in his head on this album. It's the last time he ever really sounds like this. This is the height of Bob as he is commonly regarded when people think of Bob Dylan. The snarling, cynical, absurdist lyrics over a crunching electric backing. That changes in very short order after this album. A lot changes after this album. What did you think of it, Sid?
So I knew this album from way back. There was a friend. I used to live in a communal house, and there was a friend introduced me to the album. And actually, even before that, many years before that, there's another friend who had the album, and he's sadly no longer with us, but he had the album, and it was on a lot at the time. So I'm talking about, on that particular occasion, I'm talking about sort of, I don't know, 73, 74, 75, something like that. And then a bit later, in the communal house side of things, it was one of those albums that would be, you know, on the turntable in the dining room kind of thing. But For me, I like this album. I've got to say, I think the last three albums, you mentioned this as like the kind of the Electric trilogy, the last three albums, it's a great ride. There's some real high points in it for me. I think inevitably, the double album thing, I think for me is slightly problematic. Because it means, Dylan's got a lot of room to stretch out, and of course he's so productive at this time. He's just pouring loads and loads of songs out. I'm not sure all of them are necessarily amongst his greatest songs, perhaps, but I think there's some filler on the album. When I say filler, that implies it's somehow substandard. I just think it's not substandard per se, but it's kind of just a bit sort of thrown out without too much consideration, certainly without much in the way of any self-editing.
What would that be then? What songs would they be?
I'm terrible with track names. There's a track, something about Achilles.
Temporary Like Achilles.
Sorry, what?
Temporary Like Achilles.
Yeah, and there's
a list on the cover.
Yeah, oh right, that might help.
Temporary Like Achilles.
But yeah, and there's a couple of others. There's a couple of bluesy things which are perfectly serviceable bluesy things, but they don't particularly do much for me in one or two instances. But I do think there are, as you said, there are some significant steps forwards. And I have a difficult relationship with Bob's words.
Yeah, very unfortunate.
Yeah,
which affliction you bear very well.
It's a bit of a disaster if you have a bit of a difficulty with Bob Dylan's words. But there's a couple of songs. What's that song where he rattles on about the ghost of electricity howls?
Visions of Johanna.
That's
Visions
great.
Of Johanna.
That's great.
That's regarded by many as his greatest ever song, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think it's a brilliant lyric as well.
And the only I agree. I think it's a great thing. As ever, it would be great if it stopped at 4 minutes and 9 seconds, because what follows afterwards is, it's just more of the same, except it's, I don't know, there might be are there any Chinese diplomats on this one or
no, this is a Chinese diplomat-free LP. Or two LPs
or
free of Chinese diplomats, and there's no Siamese cats either. I don't think.
Is there a marzipan trouser press on this particular album? I don't know.
No, you're making that one up now. You're just being silly now.
How would you know? How would you know? But anyway, just to finish off, I kind of, so there's a lot to choose from on this album. I think side one is pretty perfect, actually. It just, for me, there's a momentum around the tracks, it sort of really builds up. I think I can't remember the name of it. It's some absurd title, but Everybody Must Get Stoned, which opens side one. What's that called?
That's called Rainy Day Women, numbers 12 and 35.
Yeah. Apparently, am I right? He just made these titles up in the studio.
No, he didn't make that title up. He knew I don't like that song, actually. I like the fact it's different. I like the fact it opens the album. But he knew he couldn't get away with calling it.
Stop. I'm going to stop you right there. What do you not like about this song?
I think it's moronic. And it's basically I'm just not interested in it. Once it starts, it never gets to. I like the backing. This one.
Hang on. Did you just say once it starts, it never
goes anywhere?
Right.
Now, I know what you're going to say. You always say in the musical back you're static on these songs. Well, but what I mean is,
welcome to my world. Welcome to my world. Once it starts, it never goes anywhere. Now that for me,
I do like the initial shock of it, I like the fact that it's a radically different arrangement than anything we've heard before in any Bob Dylan album. It's kind of this drunken Salvation Army band, isn't it, in the background? That's a very unusual thing for him to do, and it's an ear.
Can you have a drunken Salvation Army band? Wouldn't that?
No, you can't. Which is why it's so unusual. You're way behind me, Sid. That's why it's so unusual. And that's what it sounds like, though. It sounds like a Salvation Army band who've all been on the booze. And the reason it's called Rainy Day Women, numbers 12 and 35, by the way, is that he's quoting from the book of Proverbs. And the thing about people being stoned, as in biblical stoned, is a line featuring the phrase rainy day women from 2 verses of the book of Proverbs, which he's carefully selected, then changed the numbers of in the title. This is how Bob thinks of titles. So yeah, I just think, yeah, got the point. Whereas the other songs, and I know what you mean about the musical backing staying static. The musical backing is pretty much static on Visions of Johanna 2 tracks later.
Yeah, it is.
But what? First of all, that's got a better tune, and secondly, the words are absolutely fascinating. So I think things are happening in that track which never start happening in Rainy Day Women. I think Visions of Johanna, which is, I mean, a lot of his songs that seem to be about women, a lot of women claim they're about them. The songs he's written that at least 3 different women have said, that's obviously about me. The only woman who claims Visions of Johanna is about her is Joan Baez. She often, the 3 women often include Joan Baez. She always says it's about her. I don't think it's about any actual woman. There's, I don't think Johanna is a woman he's singing about. I think Johanna, and this is a very out of fashion, old-fashioned concept, is a muse, and possibly a muse who doesn't exist. And he mentions like Louise. Louise is a real woman in the song. He often refers to himself, the little boy lost. He takes himself so seriously. That's him. And he says Louise and her lover. That's him. So, and these women who are actual women haven't got the full dimension of this Joanna, who is absent at the beginning of the song and is all that remains at the end. That's him writing the song with the aid of this muse. And I think the figure of Sarah, who is just married when he's writing these songs, that's not a song you hear from someone who's, it's an unusual song from someone who's just got married and is about to have his first kid with his wife. So it's not about Sarah, although she does appear as a muse in many songs, like the last song on this album, The Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. But he does believe in this thing of the muse. And that's what that song's about.
I think in that sense, Dylan's just doing what songwriters have always done. You know, he's making shit up.
Well, yeah, but he's doing it with a particular degree of intensity in that lyric that most songwriters don't come anywhere near ever achieving. Anyway, it's a great song. It's a genuinely great song.
I do like it, although it's too long. Yeah.
Well, it's not the only song that's too long, in your opinion. I think most of the short ones are too long, according to you.
No. There's a couple on here which are, which are just about perfect. But yeah, it's.
Which are they? Which are they?
What's that? Oh God, I don't. You see, this is the trouble of not paying attention to the lyrics and not paying attention to the titles. I am at a slight disadvantage when it comes to discussing these.
This is a great discussion of the songs.
I am possibly the world's least qualified Dylan commentator.
Yeah, I think that's a fair description. What do you think of Is a Controversial Song? What do you think of Just Like a Woman?
I love it. And that would be one of the perfect songs.
Really? Do you think that's a condescending song?
I don't care. I don't listen to the lyric.
You think that's a sexist song?
I don't. Because I just like the tune, and the words kind of just pass me by. I don't listen to it and think, Proverbs or any of that shit. I just sort of think,
no.
It's a decent tune. is what I think. And I realise that's probably, for some people, that'll be a bit of a superficial kind of reading of Dylan. But but for me, it's about the only one I can manage, really. There's another song. Hang on a second. I've got a track listing somewhere that doesn't require glasses. I Want You. What I Want You. I love I Want You. I think that's a gorgeous little song. It is. Yeah, I love that. It's what's his name on that? Al Cooper. Does he play on?
Yeah,
that?
I think he is. He's on a lot of these tracks.
Yeah.
He's very popular with Bob. Yeah, and he plays the organ on that. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that one. And what I suppose, why do I love it? I think it's just that combination of sound. You know, whatever.
Yeah, it sounds very, very attractive. Yeah.
Whatever he's whittering on about, but what goes on around him, just is very, very, very convivial and sympathetic, and kind of swirls around in the moment of the piece. So, but this album, we were talking, you know, it's one of the albums, isn't it? It's one of the core albums that everybody has to have.
All three of these albums are these.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. And funnily enough, it's maybe no surprise, before embarking on this insanity of buying 41 bloody Bob Dylan albums, it's perhaps no surprise that my Dylan collection prior to this consisted of these three albums. Plus,
really, that's it.
Plus, I think a greatest hits album. And maybe a couple of others. Oh, John Wesley Harding, I've got that, and a couple of others. But those were the ones. These three albums were the ones I played the most. And Blonde on Blonde sort of has this reputation for all sorts of reasons. I do think what I will say about Dylan. I mean, I do take the view that way too much is ascribed to Dylan. You know, like his every movement is the discussion of university courses and all the rest of it, and I'm kind of like, oh yeah, about all of that. But I do think I think that's a great cover. I just think,
yeah. Well,
and I think the fact that it's out of focus, you know, that there's a sort of there's a bit of a fashion statement going on there. It's a great look. You know, he looks great, and that's the thing. He does look great, Bob Dylan. So I can go along with a lot of it, you know. But at the time it was released, I found this review. Let me just read this.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear old reviews. Yeah.
So this was written for a magazine called KRLA Beat. And it was published on the 16th of July, 1966. So it's kind of
very contemporaneous,
right on the release of it. And it opens with this great couple of sentences. Hang on a second, I can't see it. All right, there it is.
That's my ruddy nose.
It says, Bob Dylan, way out Wizard of the Weird, has added a few more Dylan originals to the music of our times. His new album, Blonde on Blonde, will probably be talked about as much as the Beatle album cover that's just been withdrawn. A reference, obviously, to the Beatles' Dead Babies cover, I presume. But later in the review, Carol Deck goes on to say, true Dylan fans shouldn't be able to keep their eyes or ears off the album for some time. The Beat can't offer any explanation for anything Dylan does. We just have to assume that everything he does is deliberate. We can recommend that you take this album and give it a lot of concentrated attention. It's Dylan, and it's Dylan now. Maybe he's ahead of his time, or maybe he's outside of time altogether. But this latest album is all we have of him as he is today, sorry. He won't be the same the next time we hear from him, which I thought was quite a nice little glimpse in the future. He won't be.
And it is also true to say he won't be the same the next time we hear from him. It's exactly right. Yeah.
So even in 1966, right on the release, I mean, it's not surprising in 1966 that people were writing about it because, you know, he's a worldwide cultural phenomenon.
There is that keeps surprising you, Sid. That's the case. And I think on this record, he's taken it as far as he can. It's this year also, we should mention that I think it's after recording this album, isn't it? He comes to Britain with the two-part show where he's playing the first half acoustic and the second half for the first time on tour in Britain with his electric band, which is the band, essentially, apart from Levon Helm, who was jumped ship sometime earlier on the tour because he can't stand all the booing. Whenever the band crank up in the second half, people start booing. And in Britain, it's a Communist Party thing, basically, as well as the Our Age folk is. They think he's sold out to commercialism because he's got a Fender Strat, even though he's released all his albums on Columbia Records. Now he's suddenly a pop star. And so there's organised campaigns of booing to start in the second half. And this is a crucial year for Dylan because after going through an entire tour of America, Canada, mainland Europe, the UK and Australia, where everybody boos him every night, although he believes in what they're doing, and they are, you know, very kind of bravado about it, we're going to carry on. There's no way that doesn't have an effect on the musicians going out there, doing the best they can in the face of a load of booing. And he never wants to be like this again after this. And he's also fed up of the pressure of the tour. Yeah. He's fed up of, there's a massive amphetamine intake at this point. And I think a lot of that is just to keep him going. Because when he's playing all these gigs and making these records, as you say, he's writing 24/7. The year before the film Don't Look Back, which I watched this week, he's typing all the time. Whatever's happening in the hotel room, whatever nonsense is in the background, he's sitting there typing because he's just writing all the time. And I think he thinks he's on a treadmill, and he's also about to discover he's getting drastically ripped off as well. and when he comes back to America after these gigs, Albert Grossman immediately presents him with an itinerary for 80-odd more American gigs that year. And then suddenly he has this weird motorcycle accident about which accounts differ, you know. But that is a pivotal moment when the old Dylan goes and the new Dylan, which we'll see next episode, emerges.
So what's the track you pick from this album? Difficult choice, I would imagine.
There's loads of great tracks. I like Most Likely You Go Your Way and I'll Go Mine, which he's actually doing at the moment on tour. I love I Want You, like you do. I love, I like Sad-Eyed Ladies of the Lowlands, which we've not mentioned before in this conversation, but is the whole fourth side of the record, even though I think it's shorter than Desolation Row. It does take up an entire fourth side of this record, 11 odd minutes. I think it's a decent song, but I agree with you on that one. I think it's a bit too long, and it's definitely more pretentious than any other song on the record. He's desperate to write a song about Sarah, and the musicians turn up at 6 o'clock in the evening to record this song, which he's got a tune for, and he tells them, "I'm just writing the words. You go to the bar or whatever down there, go anywhere, play pool, play cards, and we'll call you up when I finish the words." And they're called up 8 hours later at 4 o'clock in the morning. And they've got no reason to believe it's just going to be a 3 or 4 minute song. So he starts playing it, and they just all start playing along live. These are all live recordings in the studio. They're just playing at the same time and playing them as is. And, you know, they keep coming to the end of every chorus thinking he's going to finish in a minute. And he just carries on going for 11 odd minutes. And allegedly there's an even longer take. They're astonished the first time they play it. They can't believe it's still going on. And he, you know, then he just finishes, and he's given them before that the most minimal instructions, and then he just does it all again straight after. I think they finish it that morning. I think it should have had these albums are all made very quickly, and I think it's a bit. I like the song, and it's got some great lines in it, but I think it's a bit ponderous.
So
what's
the track? What's the track?
Visions of Joanna.
Ah, right. Yeah.
I think the lyrical and the musical. On his tour before this album came out in Britain, he was doing it acoustically in the first half before the booze. He was obviously keen to present it, and I think it is the best song on the record. On anybody else will need to make another record if they made that song. Which is yours?
Like you, I spoilt for choice really, because there are several really great moments, great tracks. I did one thing, Pledging My Time. I know there's no technical link to it, but it always made me think when I first. I can't remember the sequence of it now, but remember that track off John Lennon's Imagine? It's So Hard. I don't know. Can you remember that track? It always reminds me of Pledging My Time.
Is that on Imagine?
I think so. Yeah. But also on Pledging My Time, I noticed when I was listening to the album yesterday, which, by the way, another great pressing, I thought, on the vinyl.
Brilliant, sounds brilliant, very quiet. Really good. It's the mono mix, which is also a great mix.
Yeah, it sounds great.
I was very impressed by the sound of it.
But I noticed when I was playing Pledging My Time, there's a great moment when he does he takes what would be the first proper harmonica solo, and the first note he plays lasts 9 seconds. And I just think,
so you've timed that.
Yeah. He lasts 9 seconds before A, he changes the note, and B, does an intake of breath. So it's sort of like, whoa, that's quite edgy. The track I'd pick very quickly, there's Just Like a Woman I Like, and I Want You, I think is a beautiful, beautiful song. And there's one on the latter end of it, which is a 3/4 kind of waltzy type thing with some nice acoustic guitar on it. But the track I'd pick is Sooner or Later, One of Us Must Know.
Oh, that's a great song. Yeah,
I love that. It sounds like it's really arriving as a song for me. There's so much going on in it. I've no idea what it's about. I've no idea who it's about. I don't know what he was going through at the time. And frankly, I don't care. And I have no interest in it. But for me, it's the cumulative sound of it, which just hangs together, and it's got a fairly decent chorus. So there you are. That's my track. I think the two tracks we picked don't do a bad job of reflecting the album.
Yeah, I think it's a great album. Yeah. I think it's okay. As I say, I think the sound of the musicians.
Yep. So
it's a unique.
So what's next? Where are we going next?
Next in 2 weeks' time, we'll be doing John Wesley Harding.
Great.
Which is the last in a series of masterpieces.
Great stuff. Right. See you later.
See you next time.